Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be starting a new sewing project, and this will be my first project of 2022. Today, I'm going to be sewing myself a new dress, and I'm going to be using the Friday Pattern Co. Wilder dress sewing pattern. I picked up this pattern a while ago when I saw tons of other creators online making dresses from this pattern, and I just thought they were so beautiful. In particular, when I saw Paige Joanna make her version of the Wilder dress here on YouTube, I was so inspired by the pastel colors she chose to pair together and the spring colors that she used. And it was so creative the way she was able to incorporate so many different colors in her dress. So it's actually the middle of winter right now, and it's minus 10 degrees outside as I'm sitting down here to film this. So it's kind of funny that I'm feeling so inspired to sew a spring summer dress when it's freezing outside. I won't be able to wear this dress for quite a while, but I still am just really in the mood to sew this right now. I think because it's so cold here and it's been so dark and we've had some new pandemic restrictions put in place recently, I've just been feeling a bit down, and I feel like sewing myself a bright, springy dress is the perfect way to get out of my funk. So in terms of fabrics that I want to use today, the first fabric I have is this beautiful floral block printed cotton. It's got these lovely peachy flowers on it with green details on a white background. I got this fabric on Etsy last year from a seller based in India who sells handmade block printed Indian cottons. And if you didn't know, India is known all over the world for their beautiful block printed fabric. So I picked some of this fabric up, and ever since I got it, I've just been so in love with it. But because it's been fall and winter recently, I haven't been going towards it to sew, but I thought it would be the perfect fabric for this Wilder gown project. I do also have here this pale pink linen fabric that I picked up from fabricstore.com last year as well. And I was playing with the idea of using both of these fabrics together to make this dress, and doing something fun with some color blocking like I saw Paige Joanna do for her dress. But I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like, so I decided to go ahead and create some rough sketches on Photoshop. So please ignore my bad Photoshop skills. I just do this for myself informally to see what something will look like if I'm having trouble visualizing it. And I came up with 4 designs, and I wanted to get your opinion, so I put them up on Instagram, and the overwhelming response was that you guys thought I should just make a Wilder gown out of the one pattern fabric. So some of the color blocked options had a few votes, but overall most of the votes were for the one consistent fabric. So I decided just to go with that. If I want to make this dress again, I can always try color blocking, and I can really easily reorder this fabric as well. For now, I thought I'll go with what you guys think, and I'll make this dress out of the one fabric. So if you want to see the process of how I made this dress, please just keep following along. So to start off, I cut out my pattern pieces from my fabric. Because I'm making the dress version of this pattern, I cut at the dress cut line on the front and back bodice, which is shorter than the full length of the pattern that you would use if you were making a blouse. I also cut out the 2 sleeve pieces, and then I cut out the layers from my skirt. So this pattern features 2 sleeve pieces, 2 front bodice pieces that will be stitched up the front to have a center seam, the back bodice piece, which is cut on fold, 2 long strips of fabric that will become the tie at the neckline, and 2 skirt tiers. For the narrower bottom tier, there's 3 pieces of fabric, and for the longer top tier, I cut out 2 pieces of the fabric. To begin sewing, I pinned the 2 front bodice pieces right sides together, and I stitched along the center front seam. I stitched using a regular stitch up until the notch, and then from the notch to the top of the pattern, I stitched using a basting stitch. Once the seam was pressed open, I tucked the raw edges underneath back towards the seam itself and pressed it down. Then I'll top stitch down from the right side to give this garment a neat finish. Then I unpicked the seam from the top of the bodice down to the notch. Next, I pinned my sleeve pieces right sides together to my front bodice pieces, matching up the notches. I then finished my seams and trimmed off the extra. I pressed my seams open, and then I had a nice, neat front bodice with the sleeves attached. Next, I pinned my back bodice right sides together with the sleeve pieces. I stitched my seams, finished my seams, trimmed, and then pressed. After that, I pinned my underarm seams right sides together all the way from the tip of the sleeve down to the bodice seam. I stitched these on my sewing machine, and again I finished my seams, cut off the extra, and pressed it. To finish the ends of my sleeves, I turned over the sleeve edge a 1/4 inch to the wrong side of the fabric, pressed, and then turned the edge another 1/2 inch to the wrong side and pressed again. Then I stitched along this side for a neat finish. Next, it's time to create the casing for the ties that are at the neckline. First, I turned 1/2 inch of fabric from the top edge of the bodice over to the wrong side and pressed. Then I turned this press edge over 2 inches to the wrong side. I used my ruler and I did this all the way along the top edge of my bodice to get a neat finish. I pressed and then I stitched along the folded edge. For the ties, I sewed them right sides together and turned it inside out, and then I pressed for a neat finish. I created the casing for my ties by stitching about 1 inch away from my original stitch line along the neckline. Then I threaded my ties through the casing. With that done, my bodice was looking good and it was time to work on the skirt. For the skirt, I stitched my 2 top tier pieces right sides together at either side, and then I sewed a long basting stitch along the top of the skirt. Next, I had to gather the top edge of my skirt so that it was the same width as my bodice piece. I then pinned the skirt piece to the bodice right sides together, making sure to match the notches that I had created before I started gathering. Once I was sure that my gathering was even, I took it over to my sewing machine and then I stitched. I finished the seam using my usual zigzag stitch. I trimmed off the extra seam allowance, pressed for a neat finish. I used the same approach when creating the bottom tier, gathering the top edge of the tier to fit the tier before it, matching up the notches right sides together, and then stitching my seam. I didn't have enough fabric for the full length of this dress, so I decided to shorten the 2 tiers of the skirt just using the fabric that I had. As usual, I finished my seam, trimmed off the excess, and then pressed it for a neat finish. Finally, the last thing to do was to hem the bottom edge of the skirt. I did this using a simple hem. I turned in about a 1/4 inch of the fabric towards the wrong side, pressed, and then turned that folded edge in one more time and pressed at about 1/2 inch. And then I stitched and my dress was all done. So I'm done my work on the Wilder gown dress by Friday Pattern Co. And I'm so happy with how this dress turned out. It has so many details that I think are just so beautiful. I love the drawstring neckline effect that ends up giving a ruffle at the neck, and I think it's pretty cool that you can wear this dress either open or tied up for 2 different looks. As you saw during the process of making this, I ended up having to shorten the layers of the tiers of the skirt quite a bit. I just simply didn't have enough fabric to make it full length. But I'm glad I shortened it anyways. I'm not too much of a maxi dress kind of gal, especially for a print that is this loud. I do think for me personally, a maxi dress in this print may have been a little bit too much. but the length that it's at now is still a length I'm really comfortable in. It hits my knees. I'll be able to wear it out in the spring, summer without worrying that it's going to blow away in the wind or something like that. Overall, this dress came together so quickly and easily. I think this is a great pattern for you if you are a beginner sewist and you're looking to make one of your first dress garments. I think this would be a great pattern to start with, as it's really a lot of stitching straight lines, but you do also get to practice some techniques like gathering. A couple of thoughts. One is that I made this dress out of a lightweight cotton fabric, and while I think the skirt portion looks great, I do think that the neckline gathers sit a little bit strangely in the cotton. When I tie up the necktie, the slit in the front can tend to just drape a little bit weirdly. I do think if you were using a fabric that was a little bit heavier with a little bit more drape, you wouldn't have that problem at all. But since this is a bit of a crisper fabric with not as much drape, it does just tend to hang a little bit weirdly. Second thought for me is that I sewed up my usual size in this pattern, and it fits me pretty well, but I do have pretty broad shoulders for my size, and I perhaps could have gone one size up just for a little bit of additional comfort in the shoulders. I do find the fact that the sleeves are really just a gathered piece of fabric that attaches to the neckband, it's a little bit restrictive, and I do think it would have been a bit comfier for me to go up one size, so I would keep that in mind if you are also someone who has broader shoulders. So my last favorite thing about the dress is just the fabric itself. Lately, I've been super into this peachy corally color. As you can tell, I'm wearing a sweater in this color today, and the flowers on this dress are just such a beautiful color. I think this color is really flattering on me. I went through a phase over the last 2 years where I was trying to build more of a capsule wardrobe, and so to do that, I'd cut out a lot of bright colors from my wardrobe to make things easier to pair with each other. But I found myself just feeling so bored about my wardrobe recently. So one thing that I'm hoping to do in 2022 is to sew with some more colors, and I can't wait to wear this dress this spring. Couple last thoughts about the pattern itself. I do think if you sewed this up in a more drapey, heavier fabric, this could definitely be something you could wear to work. My workplace is business casual. I do think that the fabric I used for this version of the dress is a little bit too summery and beachy for me to be able to wear into the office personally, but I do think if I sewed it up again in maybe a rayon crepe or something with a bit more drape in a more neutral color, I think it could easily be a go-to dress for me for work. So I hope you enjoyed following along with me as I sewed my first project of the new year. It was so fun just to sew something easy that made me happy, and I didn't have any major hiccups or issues while I was going through and sewing this, so it's really put me in a good headspace to be excited about all of my upcoming sewing projects for the year. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you like videos like this, please do subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here. Let me know in the comments down below what your first sewing project of 2022 is going to be, or what you already sewed up at the beginning of this year, because I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye for now.